Another year has passed, and so has another 365 days of the YouTuber life. I'm writing this in a spontaneous bout of motivation amidst the yearly winter arc. Darkwave medieval ambience fuels my creativity as I pace my room, like a late Middle Ages noble writing a letter, except far less luxurious. This period of time has, of course, been mostly occupied with gaming, a hobby which is enjoyed by many, especially those with less sausage. Many a game I did play, most of which I enjoyed a great deal, and which I've shared with you, fellow gamer. But there are a good amount I did not share, mostly because I felt they didn't fit the bill for my little niche I curated here on the Dopey channel. But I do, in fact, enjoy games outside of freaky little indie titles. Now, spoiler, most of these games are very old, and another spoiler, you probably know a good chunk of them already, given the average age of my audience. But it's my channel, and I have a strong desire to talk about each and every one, and that is what I shall do. For I look and see what is presented to us as the best games of this year, and remain indifferent, turn my back, and return to my little corner of hyperfixations. My own list is what I've created, my personal favourite games I played in the big 2025. Now, did any of these games actually come out this year? No. No, they did not. Will this stop me? No. So, without further ado, allow me to begin. I wanted to talk about these games in order of when I played them, but such information has long since slipped my mind and fallen into the void of the past 5 years. So, I'll start from oldest to newest. Daggerfall, the second installment in the Elder Scrolls series, and in my opinion, one of the greatest. Yes, the other one is on this list. We'll get to that later. One day, I had the desire to play the earlier installments of this beloved series of games, after sinking a good amount of time into Skyrim, playing both vanilla and modded. So, naturally, I took a trip back to 1996, where the world map has a bigger landmass to my home island, the dungeons make you want to kill yourself, and the games weren't afraid of a little spice. Daggerfall, or rather Daggerfall Unity, I believe single-handedly altered my taste in games. Why? Because my first experience with this game was nothing short of magical. For those unfamiliar, you start after creating your character, in a cave called Privateer's Hold. I, eager to explore, skimmed through the tutorial messages after thinking their contents to be merely common knowledge. Then, I meet the rat, and proceed to be chewed to death because attacking wasn't left click. Though I soon overcome this and move on, arriving at the second great hazard, the imp. And, of course, die. I do not remember how many times things proceeded like this, and I like to think that I was out of this dungeon within the first day of playing. Though determined to get out of this hellhole, I persisted, past the horrifying screeches of the skeletons, and sooner or later, to the exit. Now, at the time, I had very little knowledge of the controls, and so didn't know how to open the map. So, there I stood in the snow-covered moorland, with no sense of direction, no clue as to where I needed to go, and with every single tree watching me, stumble around for a path onward. I don't think I'd played a game that had provided such an experience as that, and like I said, it was nothing short of magical. I didn't feel put off by the fact that the game basically just spat me out in the middle of nowhere, and it only took me a minute to start walking in a random direction to see what I could find. I do think though it was partially aided by the insane draw distance that the game running on Unity allows for. It was a breath of fresh air to not be placed in some starting town, and the sense of adventure I got has since remained unmatched. Though it was all fun and games until I stepped foot into my first dungeon. Now, I won't be diving into any more of this game, as there are literally days of content covering it, and for good reason. The soundtrack alone is a divine experience. I think Daggerfall is one that will stay with me for a while, and one I can wholeheartedly recommend to anyone wanting to sink many an hour into a very solid RPG. That being said, there are many more games I want to praise, so let's move on. After playing a small indie game on one of my Fables live streams, claiming to be inspired by games called Diablo 1 and Throne of Darkness, I wanted to try out said games after enjoying what they had so passionately influenced. There's something I like about the simplicity of the goal of Diablo. You're basically called upon by a group of feeble townsfolk to cleanse the lands of evil by delving deep into the crust of the earth. Having such a clear objective and doing everything in your power to accomplish it, or die trying, is to me the perfect contrast to a lot of the other games I enjoy playing, where more often than not there is a myriad of tasks to be done, a vast amount of dungeons to be conquered, and NPCs to meet. Not bad things by any means, but it's nice to play something where pretty much your only objective is to fight tooth and nail to the very end. It's something I like about traditional roguelikes, and part of the reason I like another game, Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup, so very much. A mystical orb that needs retrieving from a perilous and mysterious dungeon? Sign me up. A big f***ing demon that needs to be killed in the very depths of hell? You best believe I'll be there. Diablo fits this bill very, very well, and I've enjoyed every minute of my time in the grim, dingy dungeons. Which leads me on to the atmosphere of this game. The soundtrack for this game quickly became one of my favourites of any game, and actually inspired my own take on a tune fit for the depths. The visuals for the dungeon are pretty standard for the most part. Not bad, just quite traditional, and do give this very creepy and strange feeling paired with the music of this game. I almost feel like whoever composed it envisioned a much weirder and more incomprehensible maze of underground tunnels and caverns, as opposed to the very traditional fantasy theme that the game has going on, though I do think its rendition of hell is very cool, and some of the enemies are a little more in line with the eerie tone of the music. I went into Diablo completely blind, and enjoyed it very much. If you haven't played the game before, I suggest you do the same. Sure, your character may not be the most optimal, but honestly, for me that added to the enjoyment. It felt more like I conquered the dungeon myself, rather than making the most optimal choices for my character based off of some guide. I played Sorcerer, by the way. I highly enjoyed and recommend this game. By default, it is quite dated, but there is a mod to bring widescreen support and more frames than some every so often. This is the first, but certainly not the last game on this list that I can thank Mr. Zintak for showing me. And if you haven't noticed already, my taste in games is quite biased towards the fantasy genre. I'll keep this one short, as if you're a viewer of this channel, then you've likely already seen a video about this game. And if you haven't, search Age of Wonders on YouTube, and click the first or second video that comes up. Your life will be changed for the better, trust me. I've never really been too interested in strategy games. You won't catch me playing titles such as Crusader Kings, because, well, I'd rather read a book. But pack enough whimsy, charm, or pixelated boobies into one, and I might just play it. In other words, and I have this for all games I choose to play, one has to fit an arbitrary mental criteria, like weirdness, charm, and so on. And this most certainly did. So I went right ahead and definitely 100% legally acquired the game, and began playing. It plays very similar to a modern title that I have played, The Battle of Polytopia. It is essentially that game, but more in depth, and with a different win condition. There are many ways to go about winning, and a good amount of them involve exploiting the game's insane mechanics. Think Morrowind levels of tomfoolery, but in a strategy game. Okay, looking back, I was exaggerating quite a bit there, but you know what I mean. If your leader dies, you lose. If you kill a rival faction's leader, they lose, and their entire army becomes neutral. Now, let me be truthful. The gameplay is all well and good. But as a fantasy music enjoyer, the real reason I play this game is to listen to the game's soundtrack. It is truly a work of art. Clouds and feuds makes getting your entire party slimed out by a pestilence cloud a divine experience. Again, this is another game I'll be playing on and off for the foreseeable future, for the soundtrack alone, and I present it to you with my highest recommendations, though fair warning, it is incredibly jank. So however you intend on obtaining the game, I recommend patching it up before you play. The other game I checked out after playing Tower of Kael Monvo. Throne of Darkness is essentially 4-player Diablo, where you control all 4 of those players. Actually, I lied. There are 7 controllable characters, but you can only have 4 of them active at any one time, and you only physically move one of them. The rest will follow and attempt to engage in combat the best they can. If this sounds like a pain in the ass, that's because it is. But personally, I enjoy the chaos that happens in pretty much every fight. You may think you have a plan for taking out a group of enemies. You may even try and use the provided tactics mechanic. But more often than not, a fight will boil down to fuck it, just hit them with everything you have. This really separates the boys from the men, or rather the wizard from everyone else. Now, you just finished a fight, and thus proceeds the other half of this game. Menus. Whatever devious creature you just fought probably beat your entire squad within an inch of their lives, in the process heavily damaging every single piece of equipment equipped on their bodies. So now, it's time to repair. You also probably want what the enemy drops, or at the very least, the shekels, used for basic commerce. So, let me tell you now, have one guy to hold all of the money, or distribute it evenly, because otherwise you will go to identify an item, be told the person that you have selected is fucking broke,
you do not have enough gold,
and have to find out of 7 inventories who has enough money to pay. For items, it's a little less annoying. Though be prepared to have random weapons, gems and other trinkets accumulate in each of the unit's inventories. My advice, if it's a weapon you don't need, give it to the blacksmith. If it's an item that can be socketed into a weapon, keep it but try and use it as soon as possible. They stack up fast. Given these two things, gameplay can be roughly broken down into explore, fight bad guys, and spend 5 to 10 minutes managing inventories, repairing gear, and whatever the fuck else needs doing, and move on. This certainly isn't for everyone, but personally, I don't mind, and actually quite enjoy the methodical way of playing. You could honestly watch me play this game for a good 2 hours, and half of the time I would be staring at some kind of menu, and I would be thoroughly enjoying myself. Not to mention, once again, the music and ambience is spot on. It's one of those games that I just like to exist in. I will note though, that if you plan on playing this, to my knowledge there is no mod to get widescreen or high frame rate support. Personally, I can live with it. But just don't go trying to change the frame rate in the config file, unless you want to test your reflexes. Stronghold. A game that I was very late to the party on, but I'm by no means complaining, as seeing the bigger picture of this series allowed me the insight into which ones may be worth playing after I get bored of the original, and which ones I should stay clear of. Personally, I dived right in with the OG, and only got the definitive edition later on after I got tired of trying to play multiplayer like 9/11 was still a recent event. This game is, hands down, a work of art. I don't have any nostalgia for it, but it did give me memories of this old tabletop game I used to play with my brothers when I was younger, called Crossbows and Catapults, which I'm sure was a very civilized event, and definitely didn't resort to us pelting little plastic discs at each other's heads. But I digress. The gameplay is a little dated, but it actually wasn't that hard to get used to. It kind of sets itself up in the intro cinematic as being quite a dark and gritty game, with it portraying the worst the Middle Ages has to offer, but playing the game is actually genuinely relaxing, with a good chunk of your time spent managing food, making weapons and building up your castle. Again, like Throne of Darkness, to exist in this game is very pleasant. Of course, this is aided by the phenomenal soundtrack. It has heavy Songs of Six vibes, and works great to aid both sides of the gameplay, really ramping up when it needs to in huge battles and whatnot. What else can I say? I like the art the same reason I like Diablos, and the music the same as I like Age of Wonders. The game has real soul to it, and it shows. I will say though, if you want an all-round easier experience playing multiplayer specifically, just play the definitive edition. It looks slightly different because of the whole remastered visuals and all, and my god did they butcher this guy. I forgot what he's called, but damn, brother went from Grima Wormtongue to Gerald Sugarlips. It's a must-play in my opinion, and very much worth it considering the game goes on sale, very often, for literal pennies. The last game on this list, and I'm sure you know it already, that's right, it's Morrowind. Yes, somehow in its over 20 years it's been out, I never got around to playing it until just last year. I was probably too busy trying to get CBBE working in Skyrim. If you know, you know. Anyway, I decided to play it for the same reason I did Daggerfall. I wanted to check out the earlier games in the Elder Scrolls series, and I'm very glad I decided to do this. It didn't really take much getting into for me, despite the default walk speed being slower than an arthritic old woman, and every time you talk to an NPC, it was like reading a short novel. But again, the game drew me into its world with an enchanting atmosphere, and kept me there with probably the best RPG gameplay I've ever experienced. Ah yes, the gameplay. A true test of restraint, in my eyes. You see, there are sort of two routes you can take when you first start playing Morrowind. One is a very noble, honest route. You die in an area because the enemies are too difficult, come back later. Don't have enough magicka to reliably cast that spell you purchased? Just level up a few more times. Now, the other route has already finished the game. Why? Because the game allowed it. Hell, it damn near encourages it at times. But let me warn you, my Noir. Once you go down the second route, there is no coming back. You will try to play the game like a normal person, but at the back of your mind there will always be a voice saying, "Go on, why shouldn't you crash the economy with a potion worth more than every obtainable item that you crafted in the starting town? Or, why shouldn't you permanently increase one of your stats? It's only by a small amount, it's just so you can run for a little bit longer." Now, it's also recommended that in this day and age you install a few mods, but for me this is also a slippery slope. Personally, I've come full circle and am now enjoying the game as it was on release, though I don't blame anyone for bumping up the draw distance a bit and maybe throwing in a few patches. Morrowind stands out a lot from the other Elder Scrolls games, and for good reason. It's probably my favourite, and makes me wonder why Bethesda stopped allowing their devs to take psychedelics. All in all, I can't recommend it enough. if, like I had, you somehow haven't played it yet. This video was originally going to be a mix of old and new games I had played last year, but I wanted to get something out that wasn't going to be completely out of date when it was uploaded, although the new year has kind of been and gone at this point. I may or may not get around to talking about those games another time, but for now, I'll probably bring you guys some more of me yapping and some more obscure games. With that, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.
That's one ugly outfit. Here it comes.